the 2 footpaths so that county councillors can get a feel for this application. County Councillor Jane Lucas apologised she couldn't get to the site visit, but she is still allowed to take part. I just checked because she has taken part in the statutory training which she did some weeks ago, and obviously we'll then have a full presentation. I'm going to stop now and hand over to our Rights of Way team and the head of that team, and they will take us through the next part of the meeting where there'll be a brief presentation, etc., before we go into discussion. Thanks.
While you're doing that, I'll do this. So good morning, councillors. I'm the Countryside Access Manager for Monmouthshire County Council, and I'd like to introduce you to Gavin Pugh, the Assistant Rights Way Officer, whom some of you met this morning. He primarily deals with our legal orders, so moving paths from one place to another or creating paths. And we have a PowerPoint presentation for you today, but a full report and copies of the objection, relevant maps, etc., have been made available to you and to the wider public on the Council's website. I would also like to introduce Richard Ray from Legal Services to guide you through the legislation and to remind you of our quasi-judicial requirements as per your training you had earlier. So Richard's over there. You'll come through that in a minute. Have you got the... Sorry, just getting the presentation. Cool. So this morning, the committee needs to consider legal tests and decide whether or not the authority should make an order to divert footpath 138 Goitra Fawr. Making of the order enables public consultation to commence rather than concluding the process. The council can only confirm the order if it is unopposed. I'll pass you over to Richard here.
Hello. So Ruth's asked me to run through the statutory tests that we need to satisfy before an order can be made under Section 119 of the Highways Act. Now, pretty much all of this comes directly from the Highways Act. The committee is subject to a degree of judicial control. The decision and the process to reach it must be procedurally fair and without bias. The reasons for the decision can only be with regard to the statutory scope of these orders, which is found under Section 119 of the Highways Act, which is specifically for diversion orders. The product of the consultation that's been carried out previously should be taken into account, and the decision should be evidence-based only. The order making for a diversion order is a two-stage process, and while there are differing tests for making and confirmation, it's logical that a decision should be taken on both by the committee at the outset to determine if the order should be made at all. Once an order is made, it's subject to a 4-week public consultation and then advertised in a local newspaper. If objections to the order are made and not withdrawn, the authority is unable to confirm the order. In that case, if it still wishes for the order to be confirmed, it must refer the decision to Welsh Government's Planning Inspectorate or PEDU for confirmation. The Planning Inspector can only confirm the order if they are satisfied that these same statutory tests are met. The first tests are for making of an order. Firstly, if to make the order would be expedient in the interest of the landowner, lessee or occupier, or in the interest of the public. So it doesn't have to be in the interest of both the public and the landowner, just one or the other. An order cannot alter the point of termination of the path if it is not on a highway. If the existing path terminates on a highway, however, it may be diverted to a point on the same or connected highway, which is substantially as convenient to the public. And the following tests are for if we wish to confirm the order. Firstly, the path should not be substantially less convenient to the public in consequence of the diversion. Well, that effectively restates the test for making of the order. It is of a slightly less power. So the Highways Act gives guidance on that. Firstly, we should have consideration of the effect on the public's enjoyment of the path as whole, and the effect on both the land served by the existing right-of-way and the land over which the new right-of-way is created. Now, they're all subjective tests that the committee needs to have regard to. And the last thing is the committee should also consider any material provisions of the local authority's rights-of-way improvement plan. Now, if these tests for making and confirmation of the order are satisfied, the committee can authorise officers to make and then confirm the order. Okay.
On the 20th of July 2023, a public path order application was received by Monmouthshire County Council Countryside Access Service. It was made by the owner of Mount Pleasant, Mamylydd, to divert the public footpath that runs down the access track and through the garden of the property onto an alignment in the adjacent field. The slide that's viewable now is an illustrative plan overlain with aerial photography of the existing route and the proposed diversion of footpath 138 Goitrevauer. The solid black line is the existing alignment of the footpath, and the dashed black line is the proposed alignment of the diverted footpath. A pre-order consultation was undertaken, and I sent out consultation emails to the 14 consultees as detailed on this slide. There were 13 responses received, with no objections from 12 of the consultees and a number of positive replies. There was one group, the Open Spaces Society, who did not respond, and there was one objection received. I will now present details of the objection to the proposed order to allow consideration of the relevant points. This was the initial response from the Lower Wye Rambler Path officer following receipt of the consultation email, but prior to any site visit. And it states, I do have some concerns regarding this proposed footpath diversion, and I do not believe it would improve the route for the path user. According to Land Registry, Mount Pleasant was last sold in 2018, and the purchasers have been fully aware of the footpath, travelling along the length of the lane, driveway and past the front of the property. From the satellite imagery, the landowner of the proposed diversion also incorporates field edge footpath 23. I can see no evidence of a maintained field edge footpath, and this therefore concerns me. Personally, as a Ramblers group, we are finding more and more fields which have been traditionally grazed now being obstructed by crops. This was the initial response to the pre-order, and the consultee has made an incorrect assumption in this communication in that the field edge path referred to and appearing in the satellite image I'm about to show you is not on land owned by the applicant. These were the images that were sent to accompany that email. The paddocks is the building on the top left and of the left-hand image, and Mount Pleasant is at the bottom of the left-hand image. And as we know, the path currently runs down the boundary along the lane to Mount Pleasant, and then there is also a path running left to right, west to east, across the bottom of the garden and then across the field. The field path shown in the second image on the right-hand side of the screen is the path he refers to, and that is not on land in the control of the applicant, but there is permission from that landowner to divert the path from its current alignment onto the proposed alignment within that field. I provided a response to the Lower Wye Rambler Path officer's concerns, pointing out the reasons for the application and why I felt it was valid. And the response came back. A few points I would disagree with. If privacy and safety are a concern, you don't buy a property with a footpath running past it. If paths are not purposely hidden, obstructed, or waymarks removed in people's gardens and driveways, walkers have no problem using them. Moving a path off a route with vehicle access onto one without is generally preferred and seen as an improvement for safety reasons. This is a no-through road with minimal traffic, and this is opposite to MCC's argument given for upper minutes at Roggett, which is trying to move a traffic-free path onto a lane with vehicle access. I need to view this path and its relationship with footpath 25, which again appears to be in the garden of Mount Pleasant. I also want to look at the possibility 3/4 of the lane driveway still being used, and perhaps just prior to the house, the footpath then being diverted into the field. The comment about buying a property with a footpath nearby suggests the buyer had no concern for their privacy and safety or no right to have those concerns. Most path orders are applied for to address these types of issues, usually for sites where public rights-of-way run near dwelling houses. One of the purposes of the path order diversion process is to address such issues. There is then a comment that suggests that if a path is clear and well marked, that people have no problem using a path near to private houses and gardens. In the consultations previously conducted for diversions of paths through gardens and near houses, most path users would prefer not to walk those routes and will find an alternative route if one is available. As for safety, moving a footpath off a driveway and into a field would appear to always be safer than leaving the path along a vehicle track, irrespective of what happens at other sites. This email then from the Lower Wye Rambler, dated December 23, followed the site visit that was conducted. I do have concerns with this proposal, and I do not believe there is any clear benefit to the public in accepting this proposed diversion. The current route gives fine views towards Mynydd Garn Wen, Little Mountain and Pontypool Tower, as opposed to the diversion with intermittent views of high-sided vehicles travelling along the A4042. I also have concerns regarding the footpath being diverted onto footpath 23, point D to B. Point D to B will present extra demands of maintenance when compared to the existing footpath A to B. There appears to have been little effort in maintaining the existing rights-of-way within the applicant's land boundary. Two examples are purposely obstructing point B with a fence, now removed, and the second is a broken stile, albeit outside of the scope at grid reference, and then the grid reference is provided. There also appears to have been recent activity in clearing the footpath B towards D, for example, a clearly cut back hedgerow, which indicates a previously overgrown footpath. I object on behalf of the Ramblers to the current proposed diversion of public footpath 138. The comment about the proposal, the objector's comments about the views are addressed later in this presentation. The objector's suggested alternative route will also be addressed later. And with that email, it accompanied photographs. The first photograph on the left of the slide is taken by the person making the objection of the view from the existing public right-of-way on the vehicle track across towards the Folly Tower above Pontypool. Then a section of path that actually isn't within the scope of the order, but would be used from either the existing or the proposed path to connect with the network. And then the third picture, which is the plan with a yellow line drawn over it, is a suggested proposal for an alternative route where the legal alignment would remain on the vehicle track past the paddocks towards Mount Pleasant, and then would breach the mature boundary and go out into the field and meet the existing footpath to the south at the same point as the proposed route. A further email was received following a response which stated the length of the footpath which I consider should be protected to allow the footpath user panoramic views towards Mynydd Garn Wen, Little Mountain and Pontypool Tower, while still allowing Mount Pleasant both privacy and security measures 0.07 of a mile, and the new proposal measures circa 0.03 of a mile. The compromise which I've accepted on behalf of the Ramblers is diverting the path onto footpath 23 away from Mount Pleasant House. My objection therefore still stands. And these are Google Earth images which aren't the most accurate, but the one on the left is the views that the objector wished to maintain, and the views on the right are those towards the road which he felt were less enjoyable. I went back to the person making the objection and explained the necessity that with an unresolved objection there would be a need to take this before the Rights of Way panel committee. And the response was, I fully appreciate your position and that you feel it is necessary to take this one to the Rights of Way panel. You have mentioned that public enjoyment is subjective, but likewise safety, security and privacy is also subjective. The litmus test I always use when looking at how much a footpath is used is to use Strava heat map. The heat signature using the footpath through Mount Pleasant is very faint. This is no Cambrian Way. And just for people's information, the Cambrian Way is a national trail within Wales that's heavily used. My view is that the comment that path enjoyment is as subjective as the safety, security and privacy elements involved in this case is questionable. There are likely to be greater safety risks with walking a vehicle track compared to a field. There are privacy issues with a path that runs near one property and in the immediate vicinity and past windows of another. There is also likely to be an increased security risk with a right-of-way that runs near to outbuildings in a dwelling house than if it runs from those buildings. And the litmus test referred to above is not strictly relevant to the path order process. The level of use of the path is believed to be low, but the same legal tests apply to rights-of-way irrespective of their level of use. So, in response to the objections, the objection is fundamentally about the enjoyment of the existing path compared to the proposed path. This is a consideration for the committee to decide upon for the confirmation of an order. It is the belief of MCC Countryside Access officers that the proposed path offers better views than the existing path, it runs away from the private dwelling house, and that it is a preferred option for most path users. Also, it is on a safer route through a field and not along a vehicular track. This makes it more enjoyable. The alternative route proposed by the objector does not address all the safety, security or privacy issues that were the reason for the application. It also creates a biodiversity issue with the need to breach the mature boundary, and so for these reasons it was discounted as an alternative option. This is an edited email from the resident of the paddocks. It is relevant to point out that the owner of the paddocks, the property near point A on the plan at the top of the diversion, is the sister of the landowner at Mount Pleasant, who is the current applicant. But having received details of the objection, this email was received. The footpath runs along the visually open boundary of my property and garden, and I hope you can understand how intrusive the footpath is. I have 2 young children who in summertime are outside in the garden, quite often naked running around. Unfortunately, this footpath enables the public to be able to fully view nearly all of our garden. It will also enable the public to look into our living room, kitchen window and living space and a bedroom window, plus full view and easy access into our garden and property. This is our family space that is being compromised. My children are playing within 1 to 2 metres of this footpath. It is affecting the quality and security of our outdoor living area, especially as camera phones are now the norm. I understand that the Ramblers Association have objected to the path being moved because they will not be able to see the view of the mountain from the other side of the hedge. I'm struggling to understand the legitimacy of this. The physical structure of my house and the large objects I have situated in my garden obscure the view of the mountain. The only clear view is approximately 5 or 6 metres of length at the lower end of the path. When the footpath runs along my garden, the footpath is then shrouded by trees to the left and my property and garden to the right. There is no view of the mountain until you reach the bottom 5 or 6 metres. This does not seem logical when the other side of the hedge, the view is beautiful and open countryside. The new proposed diversion does not diminish the route, it actually enhances it. There are beautiful views over Monkswood, the Osvallion and Monmouthshire, all the way to Lanishan area, south of Monmouth, 15 miles worth of view. The comments contained within this email are valid concerns about the proposed diversion and the alternative suggested by the person objecting. The existing path has been in place for decades, but this does not preclude it from being moved by way of a legal order. A change in the makeup of the occupants of a property can prompt a path order application. The increased awareness of safeguarding and mitigating or eliminating risks to children can be a consideration in this case. These are some photos I've taken in the last couple of weeks to compare the views, which for those who haven't attended for the site visit are hopefully illustrative of the nature of the views comparative from the existing path to the proposed path. So The image on the left is the view from the top of the existing right-of-way looking south, and on the right-hand image on the slide is a view from the proposed path, top of the proposed path, also looking south. The left-hand image is the view towards the Folly Tower that the objector wishes to preserve, and the view in the right-hand image is the alternative view out to the east from the proposed path. The view south along the proposed path is on the left, and the view down the existing alignment past Mount Pleasant is the view from the right-hand image. And then from the south of the path looking back up towards point A to the north, on the left is the current right-of-way, and on the right is the existing right-of-way. And for those who've been on the site visit, the channel through the hayfield there is the one that's been cleared by the neighbouring landowners who take horses through there most days. There are some other considerations in respect of path order, public path order diversions. There is Welsh Government advice, Monmouthshire County Council's own policy, as well as the Environment Wales Act, Equality Act, Active Travel, and the Wellbeing of Future Generations. And I'll go through these now. Welsh Government advice for local authorities on public rights of way from October 2016, which is the most current and used advice, makes mention of, whereas convenience may be interpreted as meaning ease of use, enjoyment can take into account other factors, such as the views to be enjoyed from the path or way. It is possible that a proposed diversion may be as convenient as the existing path, but less enjoyable. If so, when coming to a conclusion on expediency, the decision maker would have to balance the applicant's interests in having the order confirmed against any amenity loss to the public. And another relevant section is, conversely, a proposed diversion may give greater public enjoyment, but be substantially less convenient, perhaps because the diverted route would be less accessible or longer than the existing path or way. In such circumstances, the diversion order should not be confirmed, since the diversion order cannot be confirmed if the path or way will be substantially less convenient to the public in consequence of the diversion. There is a link to this document in the report pack that was sent out for the committee, and it contains advice about all aspects of right-of-way. This does mean that a new path can be less enjoyable, but this has to be balanced against the applicant's interest against any loss of amenity to the public. If, though, the new path is substantially less convenient, even if it gives greater enjoyment, then the order cannot be confirmed. Consideration needs to be given as to whether the new path is more or less enjoyable and whether it is substantially less convenient. Monmouthshire County Council's policy is set out in our application and guidance pack. So this is what we send out to landowners who are seeking to divert, extinguish or create a path on their land. And it advises, when making a diversion order, one must also consider how it will affect the public use of the path and other nearby paths as a whole, how it will affect the land served by the existing path, how it will affect land it is diverted through, whether the diverted path is less convenient to the public, if the order is in the best interests of the person or persons named in it, and the effect the proposals will have on conservation needs and biodiversity. And if this is unknown prior to consultation, then this will usually be dealt with through the inclusion of the authority's biodiversity officer and or NRW in the pre-order consultation. In this case, the proposed path would run through an agricultural field and not along a vehicle lane that provides along a lane that provides vehicle access. It will be equally or more accessible in terms of gradients and services. Additionally, any biodiversity and conservation issues have already been addressed during pre-order consultation with MCC Biodiversity, and they are the ones who stated clearly that they would raise an objection to the alternative proposal of breaching the mature boundary near to Mount Pleasant. The Environment Wales Act 2016. The Act's aim is to help secure healthy, resilient and productive ecosystems for the future, while still meeting the challenge of creating jobs, housing and infrastructure. Public Rights of Way has its own biodiversity action plan, and the environment and biodiversity matters have already been considered a part of the pre-order consultation, and I've referred to those already. Biodiversity were consulted about the objectors' suggestion of leaving the path along the driveway and then breaching the hedge and tree boundary near Mount Pleasant. They would not wish to see this when there is an alternative diversion route, such as the one proposed in this order. The Equality Act 2010. The aim of the Equality Act is to legally protect people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. In respect of public paths, this legislation relates mostly to eliminating discrimination by way of accessibility, good quality services, avoidance of limitations such as steps, stiles, gates and steep gradients. The existing path and the proposed path are similar in length and accessibility. There is no effective way to improve the path because it runs over agricultural land, and accessibility along the proposed path would not be impaired by the proposal. Active Travel Wales Act 2013. This Act requires local authorities to exercise their functions so as to promote active travel journeys and secure new and improved active travel routes. This means that MCC must consider the needs of pedestrians and cyclists at all stages of its decision-making. Active travel is defined as travel by bike or foot to enable the public to go about their usual daily business, such as going to the shops or work. It does not include leisure. The existing path and the proposed path are similar in length and accessibility. There is no effective way to improve the path because it runs over pasture, and it would be impractical to seek to upgrade the path for cycle use. The Wellbeing and Future Generations Act 2015. The Wellbeing and Future Generations Wales Act is about improving the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of Wales. It requires public bodies to think more about the long term, work better with people and communities and each other, and look to prevent problems and take a more joined-up approach. As previously mentioned, if the order is successful, the proposed path will be immediately available and equally as accessible. The current path runs past a private dwelling house, and some path users can be deterred by this. The proposal should encourage people to walk the route, thereby improving health, well-being, and reducing emissions and costs. And we're now at recommendations.
So just one additional point to add. When we went out on site this morning, you would have noticed there was a wooden stile at the entry into the field of the proposed route. That would actually been already been negotiated with the landowners to change that to kissing gate. Yeah, a kissing gate, approved to our standards and to British standards, so it would be more accessible. I just want to let you know that. Is there any questions?
Yeah, thanks Ruth for that, and thanks Gavin for that, excuse me, very comprehensive presentation which sort of highlights the issues. I think Jane Lucas has sort of dropped off. I know she had issues. We'll go into sort of discussion now about the application. I think we're going to do a physical hands up here in the room, and somebody along with their laptop. Councillor Tony Eason.
Yeah, just one question on that matter of the potential kissing gate. Will that be part of an order? Should the decision be taken to follow that way forward?
So within the schedule which accompanies the plan to the order, a pedestrian gate to British standard has been stipulated, so the path order could only be successful once a gate is in place that reaches British standard in order to certify the order. Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Similar, sorry, I don't have my laptop. Can we ask that, because most ramblers, or a lot of ramblers, will have older maps that they may have had for centuries, you know, can we ask that there is a signage that not only says this is the footpath, but that this is a new diverted footpath, so that there's no confrontation between landowners and ramblers?
Yes, so we do inform the Ordnance Survey when there's any changes, and their path changes are being illustrated on the online mapping within a couple of weeks at present. You're right, though, anyone using a map would show the old route, and this is true of any diversion and not the new route. whenever we certify a new route, so that is to ensure that it's available and the appropriate furniture gaps are in place, we also take any waymarkings down off the old route to deter use. We add new signage to the new route, and that includes a sort of Mon County Council badge which says this route has been legally diverted, please follow waymarks.
Thank you, that's lovely.
Right, thank you. Thanks for your response, Gavin. Any other issues about this application? Councillor Eason.
Yeah, one further question. I noticed when we're there, you can see the route across the field looks as if it's been well used, and on the pictures shown here, it was very well used. Is there any indication of how many years that actual route has been used as a footway, as you might say? Because there's a definition in time where it could become automatic, am I correct?
So the route that you could see through the field has actually been a permissive route used by neighbouring property who have a couple of horses. The gates are normally locked at top and bottom and are only used by them, so it hasn't, we believe, attracted any unrecorded rights because of the nature of the use of that route. Although the style that you saw has probably been used for a short period, because that's been there a couple of months, I'd be confident that at the moment that hasn't probably attracted unrecorded rights because it is only used with the permission of the current landowner. And obviously today's decision will dictate whether that becomes the formal legal right of way in the future, or whether the legal right will stay on its current route, in which case that style would be removed and there'd be no public access to that part of the field. Thanks.
Any other questions? Can I just ask, are there any strong objections? Because the one councillor who failed to come on the site visit had IT issues, so she's not involved with the decision making. But the group went and looked at both paths this morning and walked them. And obviously we've now heard the objection which has been given by Gavin, the one objection that was received. There were no other objections, and we've obviously listened to the reasons why MCC rights of way are happy with the proposed change. Is there anybody in the chamber who is unhappy with the proposed change, taking into account what the objector has said, before I sum up? No? Okay, well, I put forward a proposal from listening to a very comprehensive answer to the one objector, the fact that the new footpath is not significantly different, it's not significantly longer. It goes through a field where there are no vehicles. We had to stop this morning because a builder's van came, and that was potentially dangerous. It will not affect biodiversity. It's not cutting down any hedgerow or trees. It's similar length. It has similar accessibility, I would say, and I'm a reasonable walker. I would say that the original footpath through the farmyard was quite rough underfoot and quite difficult to walk through, whereas the field was obviously flat and easy to get across. So you've got similar length and accessibility. The pasture is the new path, so it can't be a cycle path, but you could obviously take your bicycle across it. There is the issue of the views between the existing right-of-way looking up to the folly at Pontypool, but that was for a very short space of time, which is not available for the proposed new route. But on the other hand, there are good views looking out to the other end of the county, and it's a matter of very subjective matter of view. How do you actually judge that view? The other thing that I would, in my summing up, mention is the fact of safety and security for the farmhouse, and particularly that they've got young children running about without their clothes on in the summer, which is obviously pretty normal activity. If for householders there, they obviously don't want that. They obviously have a number of vehicles and other storage on the farmstead, which they feel are not secure with having a right of way through their farmstead. So I'm putting forward a proposal. We'll have to do it on a show of hands today because a number of people haven't got their laptops. But I put a proposal that we accept the new proposed footpath, taking into consideration, yes, we consider the one objection, but we have been swayed by the reasons and rationale put forward by the Rights of Way team for MCC. So can we do you want a roll call, or do you want to just do a show of hands, Nicola?
Just a show of hands.
Right, Councillor Tony Easton has seconded that, so we'll put it now to a vote to accept the proposed change in the Rights of Way. Okay, and I'll see Councillor Edwards unable to vote because of an interest which is not prejudicial, so obviously that is passed by the committee. I don't think there are any other issues. Thanks for your time this morning. Diolch yn fawr am eich amser bore yma a'r taith mas I Goetre. Thanks for your time today and for the pleasant walk through onto the footpath in Goetre. Diolch yn fawr. Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Sorry, before we end the meeting, I moved on the recommendation. Recommendation is it's recommended that authorisation is given to the making of the order and its confirmation if unopposed. Everybody happy with that? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the same vote. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah. No problem, Gavin. Thank you.